Hi there, I'm Linda and this is Huttons Valley Permaculture. About 6 weeks ago I did my pumpkin harvest and I got masses of beautiful pumpkins. Now I've been storing those in my carport on some shelves, but the mice are starting to get to them, and while I have been selling lots and giving them away, there's still plenty to use. In today's video I'm going to tackle the biggest, the 13 kilo pumpkin, and over the next week see what I can do with it. Now in terms of big pumpkins, I know this isn't the biggest you would have seen, but for me it's certainly the biggest I've ever grown. And to give respect to this big pumpkin, I want to use as much of it as possible. Now, as you can see, there's lots of pumpkins still to give away, and I could cut this up and give that away, but I'd rather give whole pumpkins to people so that they're not kind of in a rush to use them. So my challenge this week is to each day do something with the pumpkin to make the most of it. Now the first thing I'll do is just give it a bit of a wash. You don't know what critters have run all over the top of this while it's been out there. I had meant to cover it over so that the critters couldn't get in, but I never got to doing that. And there'll be plenty of dust and dirt, so we'll get it clean before we take it inside. All right, I think that will do nicely. Now that it's all clean, we come to the challenging part. Now when I harvested it, I really wasn't sure how I was going to go about tackling this, and I'm not really sure now. I have looked at a few videos. One used a really sharp knife. I was going to see if I had my old electric knife to get into it, or I've also got this knife as well. But a guy used just a sharp little knife like this on a gigantic pumpkin and seemed to do quite well. So that's what I'm going to tackle it with. Let's get into it. Oh, I think we're nearly right through it. Whoa, there we go. Look at that. Our massive pumpkin has been split in two, and if I'd grown just Aussie butter pumpkins, I'd be saving those seeds, but because I grew a few different types of pumpkin, I won't be saving the seed. But look at all that beautiful flesh that we can use. So now that it's been cut in two, it sort of seems less daunting. It's not solid, so it kind of seems a lot more usable once you get that into wedges. So that's what I'm going to do now, cut that up into smaller pieces so that we can assign it to different recipes or different uses. I'll get this out first. Okay, that's the stalk gone. And I might just go like this. This sharp knife is actually just the thing for this job. There's one wedge. Seems much more usable now. Still a bit of a challenge. Okay, I'm pretty pleased. That's all cut up now. Now just to decide what to do with it. Today I've already put a leg of lamb into the oven. Now I've just used some rosemary, garlic, salt and pepper on the lamb and put it on some rosemary sprigs. Some of this pumpkin is just going to be used really simply, just chopped up into wedges and added to the tray along with the lamb to have as roast pumpkin with some lamb. Now I will be keeping these pumpkin seeds and I'll see what I can do with those just to make the most of them. And today I'm just going to cut this into pieces like that, leave the skin on to roast. It's just as easy with that, and get that into the oven. I don't mind nice big chunky pieces. If you get it in with your lamb fairly early, that should cook through beautifully. I do have quite a few pumpkin pieces in there, but with roasted pumpkin you can freeze excess and have it ready to use once you drag it out of the freezer. With those pieces in the oven, it leaves us with 8 huge pieces of pumpkin left for the week. Now, I think I'll leave just one of these for each day to use, which means I need to use up 2 more today. And it's going to be these 2. And I'll just be storing these in the fridge until we get round to using them. Now what to do with these 2. I've got the oven going, so what I'm going to do is just get the seeds off this one and put that whole into a baking tray and roast that in the oven. And I'll be using that during the week to make some beautiful soup. And with this other piece, I'm going to be just cutting it up into small cubes and I'm going to freeze those for future use. You can grab those out and add them into a frittata or a risotto or a salad, and they're really handy to have in the freezer. And I'm not really sure what I'm doing with these seeds just yet, but it seems a shame just to waste them. Perhaps you can let me know in the comments what to do, what you usually do with your pumpkin seeds. So I'm just going to roast that in one piece. It might take a little while. I'll keep an eye on it. And you can drizzle some olive oil over the top of that. But I usually use tallow, so I'm going to pop some on top. And that tallow should melt and spread over the pumpkin in the oven, but I'll be checking and making sure. So that leaves this piece. We've just got to get the seeds out of this one and cut it up into small pieces. Now I will be taking the skin off for this, so I'm just going to slice that off. That bit's a bit hard to get off. There we go, nicely peeled. Now I might use my bigger knife, which I've just given a sharpen, to see if I can cut this down into slices. Actually, I might just go back to my little knife. I seem to be able to do a better job with that. Pumpkin's still challenging, even if it's just a piece, because you don't want to cut those fingers off. Alright, in the oven, which is a bit steamy, I've put in a tray with some fat into it. So I'm just going to add the cubes into that and shake them around a bit and then put them out onto a tray to bake in the oven. I'll just shake those around and get them all covered. With the lamb fat, it does solidify fairly quickly on cold surfaces, but it will quickly melt again in the oven. Got those spread evenly on both trays, and it's important not to have them too crowded so that they roast evenly. Pretty full oven at the moment. All the pumpkins out of the oven now, and it has cooled down. I've enjoyed the lamb roast, so that was delicious. Now we're just going to pop these away. The roasted big piece of pumpkin that's going towards soup, I'm just going to pop in the fridge, and I'll be making the soup in a couple of days. And I'm going to be freezing these on a tray before bagging it once it's frozen. And that means you can just grab out handfuls without it all sticking together. I'll also just put these larger pieces on a tray, not close to each other, just so that when they are frozen you can grab them out individually, and it just makes it really easy. Well, it's day 2 of my pumpkin challenge, and before we move on to my next recipe, I just wanted to mention that I did make some roast pumpkin soup yesterday with our roasted piece of pumpkin. Now to do that, it was very simple in my Thermomix. I just whisked up a brown onion and 4 cloves of garlic, then sautéed them for 3 minutes. The chopped roast pumpkins, some homemade stock paste and chicken stock were added to the Thermomix. I cooked it all for 20 minutes at 95 degrees on speed 1. After cooking, I whisked it all for 1 minute on high speed, added salt and pepper, then enjoyed a delicious bowl of soup. And normally with the leftovers, I'd be popping that into the freezer. These jars can go in the freezer if you don't fill them too far. But 2 of these are going to go to a neighbour as a thank you for borrowing a trailer yesterday. So I'll enjoy this one, and I'm sure my neighbours will enjoy those. The recipe I'm going to do today is really a side dish to a curry. Now I've got it out of Rick Stein's India cookbook, which I think I've showed you before. And we're going to be making, well, they call it a butternut squash. I've got my butter pumpkin in sweet tamarind masala. Now it's really a chutney style dish, but I'm going to just change it a little bit. If you take a screenshot right about now, you'll be able to get the recipe. And I'm just going to adjust it, not put in all the raisins. I'm going to swap out the brown sugar for some coconut sugar, and I won't be adding any dates. So it won't be as sweet as the recipe, but it'll be perfect alongside a pork chop that I've got for lunch today. As with lots of Indian recipes, there's lots of ingredients. I've got my pumpkin chopped up. I picked the smallest piece and chopped that up. And I've made some tamarind liquid, which you just get some of the tamarind pulp into some warm water, leave it for 15 minutes or so, and then strain that. And that kind of gives a kind of a bitter, well, not bitter, like a lemony, tangy taste to it. I've got 2 green chilies chopped up, 50 grams of ginger grated, 2 tablespoons of desiccated coconut. I've just got 2 tablespoons of sultanas instead of the raisins and the dates. That's what I've got, so that's what I'm using. The coconut sugar, I'm just having 1 tablespoon. The recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, but I don't want a really sweet dish. I've got 1 teaspoon of coriander powder, half a teaspoon of Kashmiri chili powder, a teaspoon of nigella seeds, a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of fenugreek. And that's all the ingredients, so now we can get started. The recipe calls for 4 tablespoons of mustard oil, but I have tallow to use, so I'm just melting that down before adding in my nigella seeds and the fenugreek seeds. Just fry the seeds for around 30 seconds or so, and that's just on the medium heat. And then you can add in the pumpkin pieces, or squash if that's what you call it, along with the green chilies, the chili powder and the coriander powder. And you can give that a nice mix around. Once that's stirred through, I'm just going to cover that over and cook on a low medium heat for around 10 minutes. but I'll be just double checking on it to make sure it's not sticking too much on the bottom. Now, this ginger actually should have gone in at the same time as the nigella seeds, but I missed it, so I'm throwing that in now and giving it a bit of a stir around. And I'll just turn the heat up a little bit. If you're making this, don't forget to put your ginger in at the start. Anyway, I'm making a few alterations to these recipes, so that's not going to matter too much. And now I'm going to add in the coconut sugar, the salt, and my sultanas, and give that a good stir. Now that's all just left to cook down for another 10 minutes or so, and it should all soften nicely. When the pumpkin's cooked through, the last thing you need to do is add some tamarind liquid. Now I'm just going to add a teaspoon at a time. Because I didn't add in the same amount of sweetness, I'm just going to add this in and give it a taste and see how it goes before kind of adding any more in. And let's just try some. And that's just delicious as is. Today I'm just having that pumpkin dish as an accompaniment to pork chop. And with all the leftovers, I'll just be freezing that in serving size portions to grab out in future. The next dish I'm making is also a side dish, and it's peri pumpkin. While I'm baking that dish, I'm also baking some more of my little pumpkin cubes, and that's for a recipe we're going to do later in the week. To make the peri, you just need to bake a chopped red onion, garlic cloves, 4 red chilies, a chopped up red capsicum. I use 2 smaller ones from the garden. You also add in some smoked paprika and a bit of oil and fry that up in the oven for about 20 minutes. The recipe calls for a ripe tomato, but I didn't have that, so later on I added in a bit of tomato paste. Once it's cooked through, you whiz that up in a food processor. I just use my stick mixer. And then you combine that with the pumpkin. Put in the baking dish and bake that till it's cooked through. Day 4, halfway through our pumpkin challenge, and today's recipes are fairly basic. I'm just going to be making a pumpkin mash and pumpkin puree. After removing the seeds and peeling the pumpkin, I chopped it into even size pieces. Then pop that over some boiling water to steam. You just need to steam the pumpkin until it's tender, and the time required for that will vary according to the size of the cubes you've got. Half of my pumpkin here I'm going to use to make the mash. Oops. And the other half I'll be pureeing. For the mash, I've added in some lamb tallow, and I'll add in some salt and a little bit of black pepper. You can do all of that to taste. And traditionally, pumpkin mash had butter in it, but I'm dairy free, so I just use the tallow. And then mash it up just until it's a nice consistency. For the other half of the pumpkin, I'm not adding anything else to it, and I'm just going to use my stick mixer to puree that. And that's a really nice, thick, smooth puree. Puree and mash is a quick and easy way to use up pumpkin. Now I'll be having some of the mash with lamb chops for lunch, and I will be freezing both of these into silicone cubes to store in the freezer. I have reserved some of the puree for a recipe that I'm going to be doing later in the week. Day 5 of our pumpkin challenge is an easy one because the pumpkin's already prepared. I've already cut that up and roasted the pumpkin pieces, so we're ready to go with today's frittata recipe. The other ingredients I've got for the frittata today are 10 eggs, which I've previously preserved from back in spring. I've grated up some zucchini, chopped some parsley and some Swiss chard leaves, and I've got some salt and pepper to taste. Once your ingredients are prepared, it's just a matter of adding it all together in one bowl. And stirring it all together. And that is ready to go into our pan. And I'll just kind of spread that all out evenly. And I'll pop that into the oven on about 180 degrees for probably about 20-25 minutes. Okay, now the frittata's been in the oven about half an hour actually, and it's just cooked. It really depends on what ingredients you've got in there, how long it's going to take. But that is beautiful. Just 2 pieces to go, which means we must be up to day 6. For day 6 of our pumpkin challenge, I'm going to be making another soup, and it's my version of a Thai pumpkin soup. And as with the other recipes we've done this week, I'm going to start by preparing our ingredients. First, I chop up my pumpkin. The other ingredients I've prepared are a couple of chilies. I've quartered a red onion, and I've got 4 garlic cloves here. And I've also grabbed out of the freezer some of my homemade Tikka Paste, which is going to take the place of red curry paste in this Thai soup recipe. Once again, I'm going to be using my Thermomix for this soup recipe, but you could do it on the stovetop as well. I'm going to start by chopping up my onion and my garlic. And I'll add some oil, then cook that for 3 minutes, 95 degrees and speed 1. Once that's all cooked, we can add some other ingredients. I'll add in my chilies and then our pumpkin cubes. Now I might kind of whiz these down because there's quite a few here and it mightn't fit in. Now I've just whizzed that up enough so I can add the rest of the pumpkin, which I'll also chop up. And to that, I'm just going to add 2 big spoonfuls of our flavouring, which is, in my case, the Tikka Paste, but you could be adding in some Thai red curry paste that you've bought as well. And we'll just add in some liquid. You could be using some stock, but I don't have any to add at the moment. And I'm just adding about 1 litre of water for 20 minutes at 98 on speed 1. With that all cooked now, all I need to do is add our last 2 ingredients in, which is some coconut milk powder. I just kind of, with these Thermomix soup recipes, I kind of just guess a lot of the ingredients. So I kind of just put in a bit of that and a bit of salt, and I'll whiz that all up for about 1 minute. And we should have a tasty soup. Now it looks a bit like our roast pumpkin soup, but it's certainly going to taste a lot more zingier. Not quite presentation, but hey. You can garnish that with a little bit of coriander if you've got it, and maybe some coconut milk as well. And if you love spicy, that is absolutely delicious. And with the leftovers, once again, I can share it with the neighbours, or I can keep this one to myself and pop it in the freezer. We're up to day 7 of the pumpkin challenge, which is the final day, and I've been out to the garden to grab what will be the last of the green beans and also zucchini because I'm making a vegetable curry dish. And as you can see, I've already prepared all the ingredients for the recipe that we're going to make today. Once again, I've grabbed out Rick's book, and today we're going to be making this vegetable curry. Now, Makhanawala is the name of it, which means lots of butter and cream. But because I'm dairy free, I'm going to be subbing out some of these ingredients, including the yogurt and cream and the ghee, for tallow and some coconut milk. So let's just talk through the ingredients we've got here. I've got my spices, which are listed all in this recipe, so have a look through that. And I've got garlic and ginger, sliced brown onion. I've chopped up my pumpkin and my beans and zucchini. Here I've got the coconut milk all ready to go, and instead of tomato passata, I've got this thick tomato puree. And this here is 25 grams of cashews blended up with 2 tablespoons of warm water. Now I just did that in my mortar and pestle, but you can do it quite quickly in a little food processor. I'm just going to start by getting my pumpkin pieces steamed until they're tender. While the pumpkin is steaming, you can get on with the rest of the recipe, starting with frying down your onions in either the ghee if you're using that, or I'm just using some melted down tallow. When your onions have been cooking for around 10 minutes, add in the ginger and the garlic and fry that up for about a minute. Then add the tomatoes. And you let that simmer away for about 5 minutes. Then just add in all your spices and the coconut and the salt and 100 ml of water. Give that a stir. And we continue to simmer that for another 10 minutes. Okay, we're 10 minutes later, and it's time to add in our cashew nuts. And I'll give that a quick stir before adding in the zucchini and the beans. And I'll give that a stir around and leave that to cook for another 10 minutes or until those vegetables are tender. The veggies are cooked through now, so time to add the remaining ingredients. I'll add in the steamed pumpkin and my yogurt and double cream alternative, which is the coconut milk. And I'll just give that a bit of a stir. And that just needs to cook for another 2 to 3 minutes just to ensure everything is nice and hot. All that's needed now is a batch of rice to go with this beautiful curry. But that's not all. Remember I put some puree aside to use later in the week? Well, I did make something yesterday, so let's go back to yesterday and I'll show you what I did with it. While my soup is cooking, I'm just going to make something with this pumpkin puree that we prepared. Was it yesterday or the day before? I'm going to make a spicy, well, it's a spiced pumpkin chia pudding. I haven't done it before, so this is an experiment, but I'm getting it done today so that it's ready for tomorrow, our finale. So there's a sweet treat at the end of my 7 days. So I'm starting with the puree, which is quite thick. To that, I'm going to be adding some coconut milk powder. I usually make a chocolate chia pudding if I want something sweet. I don't really make a lot of sweet things, which is why I haven't made pumpkin muffins or pumpkin scones or cake or anything like that this week. But this is going to be my little reward for the work I've done. And to the puree and the coconut milk, I'm going to add some spices. Now in here I've got some seeds from a cardamom pod which I've ground down, and it does smell amazing, so I'm adding that into my jar here along with some cinnamon. Now this is just a dish for one, so I'm kind of just guessing the amounts, and just a tiny little bit of ginger. And I'm just going to add some hot water to this before whizzing it out with my stick mixer, because the coconut milk powder gets very lumpy. So just sort of up to there. So that's nice and blended now with no big coconut milk lumps in there. And to that, I'm just going to add sort of a spoon and a bit of chia seeds, and also a splash of vanilla essence. And lid on, and I'm just going to give that a good shake and pop it in the fridge, and we'll be back to visit that tomorrow. And here it is here. It's all thickened up beautifully, and I'll just add some to a bowl and see how it is. It's like pumpkin pie meets chia pudding. It's quite an interesting flavour. And quite delicious actually. You could play with the spices a little bit and the amount of sweetness in this to suit your taste. Isn't my favourite? I think chocolate chia pudding is probably my all-time favourite, but this could get up there with a few little tweaks. Well, that's been a fairly interesting week using up all my pumpkin. Thank you so much for watching to the end. It has been a long video and it's been a long week, but I've really enjoyed all the recipes, and I feel really happy that I've got plenty of pumpkin ready to use in the freezer. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Thanks so much for watching, and bye for now.